Hello team, welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. It's a new view. We're on the beta. I'm not sure when this video will be released or what the status of the beta is, but you can check out the Line War Discord for more information, a lot of quality of life fixes, and some new replay tools, casting tools, for which I'm fortunate. Today, 1v1 in blue, Brody, and in red, Notorious Nubs. Brody's going to spawn at the top. Central part of the map, Nubs off to the right. And like I said, this is beta. There's going to be balance changes with this potentially when it releases. I'm not sure. There's no balance changes in this version of the game, so it's the exact same unit stats as other recent videos on the channel. 2 airports immediately from Brody after this town and 2 industry. This is potentially the gas that Brody's going to be taking to run these 2 airport, so far strikers out of the first airport. The second airport isn't built with pre-construction money, so it's taking a little bit longer to build. And Nub's going for the 5 barrack start. And it's all actually commandos immediately from Nubs. So we'll see how this works out. First barracks now for Brody. And taking the zoom out on the map, to kind of see the situation, there's a city and 2 gases to the left. There's a city and a gas to the top right, or top left, pardon me. Some gases in the back for Nubs that they can take, and then a city in the bottom. So eco-wise, you kind of assume that blue is in a little bit of a better position to cap most of the map. But we'll see how it goes. These commandos for Nubs are going to be able to cap as well and potentially get very sneaky, go for some around the back play here and try to destroy this production. We'll see what Nubs has planned for these units. And otherwise a very slow start to this game. 2 more strikers on the way for blue, who will likely build a gas relatively quickly after this next barracks. With infantry, blue can cap a lot quicker. I mean, commandos can be used for capping as well, but they're kind of more effective when they're sneaking around. And Nubs, we've seen before that Nubs is very effective with the commandos, can make them work. Airport now for red. And like we mentioned, there's enough gas for Nubs to make a play out of tanks potentially. Whatever comes out of these airports, if Nubs wants to invest in the gas in that way. 2 strikers are now done for Brody. Neither player knows where the other one is yet. We can kind of see the vision that blue has. We don't have to worry about the fog of war. That's just a replay thing. So blue doesn't know and vice versa. There's no way that Nubs would know where Brody is as of yet. Another town for blue. So these are going to take a while to pay off, but then blue should see themselves super ahead on the economy. 433 for blue right now, and 368 for red. And I think that the real difference is just these 2 industry and city, or town, pardon me, that were built right away for blue. As for any economic stuff that Nubs could be building, there's not really anything close. There's this town in the open field, but then the next closest thing is really this city in the bottom left. So the dynamic might be that red has to get aggressive here in order to try to punish, isn't really the word at this point, but to counteract how much economic buildup blue gets, because the longer this goes, the worse this might become for red on the money side of things. Not saying that's going to be the case, but it is potentially the case. Helicopters for red. There's no anti-air for blue yet, so those helicopters are going to do great. It's more strikers. The 6th striker for blue is about to be done. The 5th and 6th striker. And then here comes this first gas for Brody, who continues to expand left and then also north. left and north, the two directions commonly agreed upon. 2 gases on this one tile, which is kind of cool. I mean, in 1v1s, there needs to be more opportunity for me to banter while we wait for the units that, like, for the armies to build up. It's not like a team game where it's immediately just into madness. Second airport now for Nubs, who presumably the next building is going to be the gas. This is a very safe gas in the forest, especially if there's a garrison of commandos on it. And this red commando army is about to make contact with blue. So this is Brody's vision, so these commandos are spotted. No, it's not. I lied. If we actually go to the true vision of the player, they cannot see them. Commandos are stealthed, of course, unless there's enough units around them to be able to detect them. But with the helicopter support, these strikers... I mean, 6 strikers against this is going to be bad news for the commandos. Factory now for Brody, as soon as they see where Nubs is. And it's sort of a little bit of a race to the bottom here. Because if you're blue, you want to cut off red from expanding kind of past this natural mountain range and forest. Here come the 5 strikers. With this many planes, they will be able to see the commandos. And they do, as they veer off. The one helicopter for Nubs is actually going to be able to fight the strikers a little bit. It will shoot at them. But with this many strikers, I mean, the strikers can also shoot at the helicopter and might be able to kill it. Two more barracks for Brody to gear up to handle this push and to push back to the bottom right. Nubs has their first factory and continues to pump helicopters out of these 2 airports. Still no gas for Nubs, but a lot of capping going on the right-hand side. If we go top-down view, we can kind of see what both, like, the area that both players have. This definitely going to heat up a little bit, and potentially in the top right here. 2 airports full of strikers. We can see that Brody's gas is getting a little bit low. So a second refinery is going to go down at any time now we'd like expect. General rule of thumb is 1 refinery per airport. The black plumes of smoke on the planes indicating that they're out of gas. Sam's on the way for Brody in response to these helicopters. And now 2 interceptors as well for Nubs. So potentially these airports are just going to be rotating between helicopters and interceptors. It'll become a question of whether Blue can get the SAMs in a position to deal with this and keep them alive. Because even 4 SAMs against any amount of helicopter interceptor, or any reasonable amount of them at this point in the game, it's enough for Blue to shut this all down. More barracks now for Brody. So Brody's got, I can count, 7 barracks against the 5 barracks of Nubs. Nubs will have a 1 factory advantage. The strikers are now going off to the top right. And this is good because it'll stop Nubs from having any units up here, so Brody won't have to worry about red expanding to the top right without them realizing or being able to stop it. Such an enormous amount of commandos for Nubs that are moving to the left-hand side. And in the same way that Brody's doing a great job to cut back on these units that are expanding for Nubs, but Nubs is making sure that they're going to have the initiative going into this forest and mountain range. First SAM for Blue is now showing up. Nubs is having gas problems. The first one is on the way. And these strikers get nearly all the infantry. They're going to get this last one. There's going to be 1 more infantry left up here for Nubs. which sometimes can be enough to backstab something and destroy a building. Cheeky little snipe. Brody's got a garrison of infantry on top of this gas that's very smart. A barracks in the north. No barracks on the left-hand side of the map yet for either player. But a good expansion potential from Nubs here. He puts down a barracks. As long as this barracks stays up, it's a great barracks. With all these strikers showing up, they might be able to see this and then destroy it. Luckily for Nubs, they have 4 interceptors that can respond to this. And there's only one SAM, and it's kind of out on its own. So these commandos could jump on this thing and kill it without being seen. It's still just straight SAMs out of this factory for blue, who puts down another town. Important to check the economies at this point. 992 for blue and 992 for red. Are you serious? Is that just perfect? Wonderfully close. 2 SAMs, the first SAMs for red, and a 3rd factory. I mean, it's going to be a combination of interceptors and SAMs that can deal with this many strikers. Let's see what 4 interceptors can do. They're going to get a little bit distracted by this SAM. I don't suspect one of them will go down, though. And kind of luckily for Brody, it's perfect timing that these planes ran out of gas, so that they're not here for these interceptors to clean them up. I think regardless, Brody would have pulled those back at around the same time. Forward gas now for blue, which is kind of out of necessity. There's no other safe gas for Brody to take. I suspect that blue feels more comfortable taking this gas than they do this one, because of how many, or partly because of how many commandos red is running. And a refinery out in the open like this is just prime for a group of commandos to show up and destroy it. And this amount of barracks, including more barracks for blue, are gonna naturally be able to defend this gas just by virtue of pushing down towards Nubs' base. 7 commandos taking on this many units. They aren't going to be able to get the gas. I'd be very shocked if they could. And these 2 airports now for blue are full, so there's going to have to be an airstrip at some point. Otherwise, these airports won't produce any more planes. Airports don't produce airplanes if the tarmac is full. So when this plane is done, it will just sit here. Interceptors for red. Interceptors are great detectors, so they're going to be able to see if there's any commandos hanging around here. This barracks will go down for Nubs with the help of these strikers. And 2 more factories for Nubs, who now has 6 factories against this many barracks. Brody going for more economy, which is a very greedy play, but in the long term could pay off if Nubs doesn't turn all this factory investment into real wins in this battle. Because like we said at the beginning of the game, the longer that it goes on that a player's ecoing, the more money that they're going to be able to get. 1229 income for blue, 1172 income for red. And it is important to see if this town gets up, and importantly if this port gets up. The dock attached to this town is a lot of economy. Rather, it's one of the more efficient economic buildings that you can build. So if blue can get this up and defend it, it's going to be hard for Nubs to keep up economically. Unfortunately, this airstrip and factory are both going to go down for red. Because Brody's jumped on this with the power of what is now, I think, about 3,800 barracks. It's a lot of interceptors for Nubs, potentially enough. So Nubs is going for more helicopters. It's still on 1 gas. This depot's starting to collect energy. And it's a good amount of SAMs for Nubs. Brody still doesn't have an airstrip, so it's still just the 2 airports worth of planes. It might be just the call, the play for Blue not to build an airstrip if some of these airplanes die, because then the airport can continue to build. I don't know, I've often wondered if it's better to just use your planes aggressively and not build an airstrip. I don't know, I guess there's like pros and cons to both ways. Factory and barracks in the north for Brody. Which I suspect these production buildings are going to be to reinforce through the mountains here. Here comes the airstrip now for Blue. 4 SAMs in the forest. Close enough that they're going to be able to shoot missiles at these strikers. They won't be able to use their autocannons, which is the thing that actually does more DPS. And this is the strength of commandos. When they're off on their own like this, they're great at clearing up these kind of roaming infantry, like capping parties from the opponent. Because those infantry for Blue can't even see those red commandos at this point. Nubs is moving the SAMs a little bit closer, so they actually aren't quite in range. Here they go. Now they're in the fight with the interceptors showing up. Blue likely going to lose at least 2 more planes here because of all these missiles. So 2 more go down, potentially a 3rd. Interceptors are just cleaning up. They might even get another plane, and they do. New beta animations, love it. And that was pretty good. I mean, it leaves Brody with just 5 planes. But Blue has a lot of barracks and a lot of money. 4 more barracks for Brody. And the first tanks are out for Nubs. 2 more refineries on the way. Very important to keep up the gas for Red because of the transition into more gas units, which are these tanks. And 3 of these factories at a time are building tanks, so it's going to be a lot of tanks for Red relatively soon, which could be huge for Nubs, because if Nubs can get enough tanks here and then just beeline towards this town, they could destroy it. Even getting on top of the production with enough tanks, it doesn't really matter how many infantry are around it. The tanks will be able to break through. Or at least they'll have a decent chance to break through. Barracks is now up for Nubs in the bottom left, and there's no risk that it's going to be destroyed. Airstrip in the north for Brody is up as well, but these 4 SAMs for Nubs are in great position. It's really just like almost a flower of SAMs here for Nubs. So flower of SAMs here, and then also this is really good to kind of defend these airports. Brody's going to try to get the max value out of the planes by sending them where the SAMs aren't, so on the left-hand side. 2 more factories and a barracks for Nubs on the right as they push up the right-hand side of the map. Really only the left-hand side that needs to be capped at this point. And eco-wise, 1364 for Red and 1655 for Blue. I think the big moment in this game is about to happen, which is as this tank count for Red becomes more and more serious. And what they're able to do offensively after they clear up these units. Helicopters for Red in the bottom left, a great place for Nubs to send these things because there's no anti-air for Blue. And Nubs is going to need an airstrip themselves. I mean, we saw that earlier they went to build an airstrip. But these airports are now for sure full. Maybe the play here is that Nubs is just going to keep moving these helicopters off the airport, so the airport never gets full. 2 more factories in the north for Brody, who's starting to build some tanks. Potentially in response to how many tanks that Red has. Now let's go top. I mean, we can't really see the individual units down here, but Red has an advantage. It's moments like that where that Blue infantry still can't see these 4 commandos, and these 3 infantry won't be able to see them either. because of their stealth bonus, and there not being enough infantry for blue to spot. Here's this airstrip, you can see because it's the little bulldozer that's starting to create it. And good SAM numbers from Nubs, who is slowly pushing this entire front line forward. So this is the moment we're kind of talking about. Let's see if these tanks can get by these units. At the very least, they draw a bunch of infantry to follow them, which allows these artillery pieces to inch their way forward. The positioning of the SAMs is very big here, because blue still has a number of strikers that could destroy all of this artillery relatively quickly. But if they do get launched here, Nubs is... I mean, these SAMs are relatively close. So it's not like they're super out of position at the moment. This is going to be a lot of units for Brody to deal with on the right-hand side. This is pretty big. That blue is on the back here. The interceptors are transferring to this airstrip. I can't imagine they're actually going up here. And they aren't. Interceptors really aren't that good against ground units. They're purely for air-to-air combat. The good thing for... interceptors are good at spotting units. They're great to send over commando groups to be able to detect the commandos. But otherwise, they're really just fit to fight planes. A city on the way for Brody, who continues to get aggressive with the eco. And here come these interceptors. They're going to run into some SAMs, though. And these SAMs are going to be able to do a ton of damage. Unfortunately for Nubs, that town does not go down. There's a lot of damage, though, so this costs blue some money to repair that. But how many planes does Nubs lose here? Probably one more helicopter as well, at least. It's starting to become a blob of artillery, though. For Red, who is now busted out of this mountain range and starting to move across this open field. More factories for Brody. These buildings are all bunched up, which is really good, like defending against tanks. Unless Nubs builds a rocket, there's no real reason why you wouldn't want to group up all your buildings. Easier to keep track of all of them, draw lines from them. 4 barracks on the left-hand side for blue is great, and even more now. Since this left-hand side of the map is going to become a huge part of the game. There's a lot of eco down there. And Nubs is going to be on a timer, because this city is about to get completed. And right now it's 1,800 income for blue, and 1,444 for red. This is a really good development. But it's a very strong... I mean, there's a lot of producers here for Brody in the north. Still, unfortunately for red, this town does not go down. So great defense from blue. More tanks streaming in. Nubs now has 2 barracks on the bottom left, which is good to try to keep pace with some of these, like how many blue barracks there are. 2 barracks on the right-hand side. There's helicopters up here as well that can kind of help out. 2 SAMs in a perfect position for blue. This gas is definitely being used by blue, and you can see it because blue puts down this refinery as well. So something that could happen as red destroys this town is that Nubs might be able to destroy this gas, and then all these planes will have to stop flying. As it stands, there's a lot of SAMs up here for red that destroy 4 planes even. Yeah, there we go. The last SAM that goes out. A ton of tanks now for Brody. All these saved up tanks over time will likely just clear this entire army. They're gonna have to move through a mountain range though. Tanks aren't that great through mountains. But there's just so many tanks for blue. And you're going to see the power of tanks here. A full flower of SAMs means that Nubs can't really send in the helicopters to deal with this. Helicopters being a great way to deal with tanks. So it's really a great move by blue here. And this is a big moment. If Brody destroys these two red barracks in the bottom left, that could be a game changer. Three tanks rushing by this army on the left-hand side, but good defense from Brody to attack these things. And the ground army for Nubs is kind of thinned out because everything's been sent to the back right here. Which it's now been cleaned up, so these three producers can start to push with Nubs' main army. That was a lot of tanks that just went at Nubs, and they're gonna get cleaned up over time. But eco-wise, this is the scary thing. Because blue might be able to just pay for a win at this point. 1520 income for red. 1924 for blue. This is certainly the moment where Nubs needs to make something happen. But blue's playing very well. These are both very skilled players. And really, I mean, a mistake anywhere could cost them the game. These helicopters are destroying the SAMs, which I almost think is actually the play. If Nubs can destroy these things, then the next time they send planes, there's no SAMs to deal with. As long as there's planes left over. I mean, 2 helicopters get out, there's still 3 SAMs alive, but the tank count for blue is relatively thin. These lines we're seeing are all the airplane commands for both players, or rather for Brody right now. 5 SAMs against this many strikers. The SAMs are going to do a great job. They're not in the mountain range, so they don't get any, like, stealth bonus. Still doing a decent amount of damage. There's no more SAMs for red. And this is a large army from blue, and Brody's starting to make a push on the top right. These 2 barracks do get cleaned out from Nubs, but there's 3 more barracks on the way. And these 4 tanks have an opportunity to do some damage because all these strikers have to go home. But with this many infantry, maybe it won't matter. It's really these 2 gases that need to fall, but there's a decent amount of tanks now here for Brody, who continues to pump mostly tanks out of these factories in the north. If we go top-down view, you can see that it's mostly blue at this point, and 4 barracks in the bottom. This is very deadly. This is probably the game ender, really, because all of this economy for red is going to be taken by blue, which is going to make the econ even worse. Two tanks get by, but there's still a decent number of strikers for blue to deal with this. Some skirmishes on the left-hand side, and a factory now for Nubs. But this is a huge problem. Those 4 barracks. Great maneuver by this army. The more fronts that red can kind of open here, I think is better. Because the planes will want to all go in the same spot. And maybe if this army for red can kind of draw either these tanks away or just some of this production, then Nubs can continue to push and get over this mountain range, because it's really the key to the game for red is destroying these refineries to make it so the planes have to stop. Another airstrip for Brody, who's building economy on the top left and taking back all of this territory. 4 barracks is such an enormous amount. The helicopters are great. It's enough helicopters that over time they're going to be able to thin out those units. And here comes a big moment. These run around from these tanks The black smoke on the refinery indicates that they now are actually creating energy. They aren't just topped up. And that's because all these planes are running. Refinery's a little bit damaged, but can the tanks actually destroy it? Is the question. The longer the tanks are here, the better fight that red gets. No snipe as of yet. And that might be the moment. Good defensive line from red in the mountains here. The artillery in the defensive line have a range bonus. They also have a defensive bonus against the grenades of the blue artillery. And unless this left-hand side of the map turns around for nubs in a big way, this is just so many production facilities for blue. And the top right, Nubs is going to start pushing back and be able to take a lot of this territory back. But eco-wise, 2162 for blue and 1412 for red. Strikers and helicopters destroying all of this infantry, but these blue infantry are going to be able to destroy this factory. Here comes the push from Brody, and once this army is destroyed, it would just become a push to win situation. And we can go top-down view. This is all still being capped by blue. If this gas went down, especially if both the gases went down, whole different game. So very, very interesting game. You can really see how strong these like geographic locations are with this mountain range, because I think that was one of the reasons why Nubs couldn't quite push through this. Just because of how awkward it is. Good game. Well played. To both. Folks, that was the beta. You can see it's a development build in the bottom right. If you'd like to learn more about the beta, you can check out the Lineboard Discord. Hope you have a wonderful evening, day, night, whatever it is for you. We'll see you soon. Peace.